The man lived in a small house on the edge of a quiet town. The house was old, with creaky wooden floors and a little garden in front, but it was filled with warmth and memories. Every morning he would wake up to the sound of birds outside his window and the soft breathing of his golden retriever, who had been his companion for many years. The dog would stretch, wag its tail, and nudge him gently as if reminding him that it was time to start the day. Their mornings were a quiet ritual. The man would put on his worn coat and take the dog's leash, and they would walk down the narrow streets greeting the familiar faces of neighbors. The dog, ever enthusiastic, would sniff every corner, chase a stray leaf, or pause to listen to the distant sounds of children playing. The man would smile, sometimes laughing softly at the dog's small antics. Despite his age and the slow pace of his steps, he felt lighter when he walked beside his companion. The dog had a way of making the ordinary moments feel full and alive. Back at home, the dog would settle near the man's feet while he prepared breakfast. The man would often talk to the dog as he worked, recounting small stories from his past or sharing little thoughts about the day ahead. The dog listened with attentive eyes, occasionally tilting its head or letting out a soft whine, almost as if it understood every word. Their bond was quiet but strong, built on years of trust, companionship, and shared life. The man's days followed a gentle rhythm. He would tend to his garden, carefully watering the plants and trimming the small bushes. The dog stayed close, sometimes lying in the sun, sometimes helping in its own way by chasing away a bird or just watching attentively. In the afternoons, they would sit by the window, the man reading a book and the dog resting its head on his knee. Sometimes the man would speak aloud, sharing thoughts or memories from his youth, and the dog would listen patiently, never interrupting, yet offering comfort with its presence. The town knew the man and his dog. People often remarked on how inseparable they were. Children would wave when they passed by, and the dog would wag its tail happily in response. Neighbors would sometimes stop to chat, commenting on the weather or the latest town news, and the dog would sit politely, as if respecting the conversation. It was a simple life, but it was filled with connection and warmth. Evenings were the most special. After dinner, the man and the dog would settle by the fireplace. The man would sometimes hum softly, and the dog would rest, occasionally looking up at him as if to say, "I am here, and I am happy." The silence between them was never empty. It was full of understanding and comfort. The dog seemed to sense the man's moods, nuzzling him when he looked tired or resting its head on his lap when he seemed thoughtful. They had a language of gestures and glances that needed no words. The man often thought about the years he had spent with his loyal companion. He remembered the day he first brought the dog home as a puppy, how it had stumbled clumsily around the house, full of energy and curiosity. Over the years, they had grown together, the man guiding the dog and the dog offering unwavering love and companionship. Even as the dog aged, slowing down in its own way, its devotion never wavered. The man found great comfort in that consistency, knowing that no matter what happened, he was never truly alone. Sometimes, the man would reflect on the quiet moments of life and feel a deep sense of gratitude. He was aware that time was passing and that both he and the dog were growing older, but he tried not to dwell on it too much. Instead, he focused on the present, cherishing the small pleasures, the warmth of the sun, the sound of birds, the gentle touch of the dog's fur, and the simple beauty of their shared routines. One particular morning, the man noticed the dog lingering longer by the door than usual, its ears perked up, eyes alert. He smiled gently and patted the dog's head. "Don't worry, old friend. Nothing will happen today. It's just another day for us." The dog seemed to understand, and with a soft wag of its tail, it followed him outside. They walked together through the familiar streets, greeting the neighbors, enjoying the simple joy of movement and companionship. Inside the house, the walls seemed to echo with memories. Photographs of past days, family members long gone, and old friends adorned the shelves. Yet the most present and living part of the home was the dog. Its presence filled every corner with warmth and life. The man often thought that the dog was not just a companion, but a guardian of memories and emotions, silently offering support and love. As the day came to an end, the man would sit in his chair by the fireplace, the dog lying contentedly at his feet. He would gaze at the flickering flames, reflecting on the simplicity and richness of their shared life. The dog, sensing the calm, would close its eyes but remain close, a steady presence that brought peace and comfort. In those moments, there was no need for words. Their bond was understood in every gesture, every look, every gentle nuzzle. Even when visitors came, the dog remained polite and welcoming, never leaving the man's side. Strangers often commented on how loyal and well-behaved the dog was, and the man would smile, feeling a quiet pride. It was more than obedience. It was the deep connection they shared, an unspoken understanding that had grown over years of trust and companionship. Night fell, and the man prepared for bed, the dog following closely. As he climbed into bed, the dog settled on its cushion nearby, occasionally resting its head on the edge of the bed to watch over him. The man whispered softly, "Sleep well, old friend." The dog's eyes would slowly close, a contented sigh escaping as if it too felt the safety and warmth of home. Life in the small house was simple, yet it was full of richness and meaning. Every day, every moment was shared between the man and his dog, a testament to loyalty, love, and companionship. They were two souls connected, not by words or obligations, but by an enduring bond that made even the quietest days feel extraordinary. And so, their life continued, a gentle rhythm of mornings, walks, meals, stories, and evenings by the fire. The town around them moved on, seasons changed and time passed, but the man and his dog remained constants in each other's lives. Their story was one of quiet joy, steadfast loyalty, and the kind of love that needed no explanation. Every glance, every nuzzle, every shared moment reinforced the truth. They were not just owner and pet. They were family, partners in the simplest and most profound sense, living each day fully together, heart to heart, without needing anything more. As the days went by, the man felt a quiet change in himself. His steps became slower, and some tasks that were once simple now took more effort. He noticed it but did not want to worry anyone, not even the dog. He continued his morning walks, tending to the garden, and keeping to his familiar routines. But the dog, ever watchful, seemed to sense something was different. It would stay closer during their walks, looking up at him often, nudging him gently if he paused or stumbled. The man sometimes paused in the middle of a task, breathing heavily while the dog remained at his side. It was as if the dog knew that even small moments of struggle needed attention and care. On such days, the dog's presence was almost a comfort that words could never match. It stayed with him silently, never leaving and always offering quiet reassurance. The man felt a deep connection with his companion, aware that the dog understood more than anyone else could. Neighbors began to notice the subtle changes too. They would greet the man during his walks, asking questions about how he was feeling, and he would smile, brushing off their concern. Yet the dog never left his side, its loyalty obvious to anyone watching. It walked slightly ahead at times, sniffing the air and looking back to ensure the man was following, almost guiding him. People would quietly comment on how protective and devoted the dog seemed, seeing it as more than a pet but a guardian. In the house, the man's routines continued, but he sometimes needed to pause and rest during chores. The dog would immediately lie down nearby, keeping watch. If he reached for a tool or tried to carry something, the dog would sit close, letting out a small whine if it seemed the man was struggling. The dog's senses seemed sharper than ever, alert to every change in his movements, almost predicting what he needed before he even realized it. One afternoon, while tending to the garden, the man felt dizzy and stumbled near a bush. The dog barked sharply, running to his side and nudging him. He laughed softly, trying to hide his unease, saying, "I'm all right, old friend, just a little tired." The dog did not leave him, following him back inside and resting its head on his lap as he sat down. The man stroked its fur, feeling comforted by the loyalty and understanding that only a companion like this could provide. The dog's behavior became more vigilant as the days passed. If the man paused during a walk, the dog would circle around, keeping a watchful eye on him. It seemed to sense even the smallest signs of weakness, staying near, sometimes pressing its body against him for reassurance. The man noticed this attentiveness, feeling grateful and touched by the silent care that the dog offered. It was a bond that had grown over years, now showing itself in even more subtle and meaningful ways. Inside the home, the dog also took it upon itself to watch over the man during quieter moments. If he fell asleep in his chair or on the couch, the dog would lie nearby, its eyes half open, alert to any movement or sound. Even when the man's neighbors came to check on him, the dog remained calm but protective, as if silently communicating that the man's well-being was its responsibility. The man often looked at the dog with a mixture of affection and admiration, realizing that this companion had become an essential part of his daily life and safety. The man's friends occasionally stopped by, bringing small gifts or sharing news from the town. The dog welcomed them politely, sitting quietly, but never straying far from the man. It was as if it understood that these visits were temporary, and that its main role was to be by the side of the one who mattered most. The dog's loyalty was evident to everyone, inspiring gentle smiles and admiration from those who witnessed it. One evening, after a particularly tiring day, the man sat in his chair by the fireplace. The dog rested its head on his knee, sighing softly. The man spoke aloud, sharing thoughts about his younger days, the people he had known, and memories that still brought him joy. The dog listened, its eyes attentive and filled with quiet understanding. No matter how much the man spoke, the dog never grew restless or distracted. It was a silent partner in reflection and comfort. The seasons began to change, and with the arrival of autumn, the days grew shorter and the air cooler. The man's health seemed to fluctuate more noticeably. He would sometimes pause during a walk, holding onto his coat for support. The dog would immediately notice, slowing down and staying close, occasionally looking up at him with a gaze that seemed to ask, "Are you all right?" It was a simple question that needed no words, understood through years of shared life and trust. Neighbors continued to show care, often peeking over the fence to check if he was all right. Yet the dog remained his constant companion, offering both protection and reassurance. One afternoon, a neighbor offered to help carry a basket of vegetables from the garden. The dog stayed close, watching the interaction closely, and when the man gently refused help, the dog seemed to nod in understanding, remaining by his side with quiet loyalty. The man noticed that the dog had become even more attentive, almost anticipating his needs before he acted. If he reached for something high on a shelf, the dog would stand nearby, ready to support in any small way it could. If he paused or shifted awkwardly while moving about the house, the dog would gently nudge him, guiding or offering reassurance. The man felt both comforted and humbled by this unwavering devotion. Sometimes, in quiet moments, the man would reflect on the years he had spent with the dog. He remembered how it had grown from a lively, curious puppy into a strong and loyal companion. Each stage of its life had brought new joys, challenges, and lessons. Now, as they faced the uncertainties of aging together, the bond had deepened further, filled with unspoken understanding and mutual care. One particular day, while walking along a familiar path, the man paused to rest on a bench. The dog sat beside him, keeping watch, ears perked, alert to every sound. Birds chirped in the distance, leaves rustled in the wind, and the town seemed calm and peaceful. Yet in that stillness, the dog's vigilance never wavered. The man gently stroked its fur, whispering, "Thank you for being here. Always." The dog leaned into him slightly, as if acknowledging the sentiment without the need for words. In the evenings, their home remained a place of warmth and routine. The man would prepare a simple meal, the dog always nearby, occasionally receiving a small treat or gentle pat. Afterward, they would sit by the fireplace, sharing the quiet comfort of presence. Even as the man felt the limitations of his body more keenly, the dog's unwavering attention and loyalty provided a steady source of comfort and peace. As the days continued, the man realized how much the dog had become his silent guardian, noticing changes he himself did not always perceive. Its loyalty was more than companionship. It was a constant, living reminder of care, love, and attention. The man felt grateful for every nudge, every glance, every gesture that conveyed understanding. In the dog's eyes, he saw a reflection of their shared history and a commitment that seemed unbreakable. And so, life continued in a rhythm of quiet observation, gentle care, and shared routines. The dog remained ever vigilant, its loyalty deepening with every passing day as it stayed close to the man, sensing his needs and providing comfort without expectation. The man, aware of the bond they shared, cherished every moment, finding strength in the silent partnership that had grown over years and continued to stand firm in the face of change. Through every small struggle and every quiet victory, their companionship was a testament to a loyalty that could not be shaken, a bond that endured quietly, profoundly, and without end. The day began like any other. The sun rose slowly over the small town, casting a warm light over the quiet streets. Inside the little house, the man stirred in his bed, the dog at his side waiting for him to wake. The morning routines, the familiar smells of breakfast and the soft sounds of the town outside had always been comforting, but on this day, something felt different. The man seemed unusually still and the dog sensed it immediately. It started with a quiet pause. The man did not rise from bed as he usually did. The dog nudged him gently with its nose, whimpering softly, sensing that something was wrong. The man opened his eyes slowly, trying to move, but his body did not respond as it usually did. Panic did not enter his mind yet. There was just a heavy stillness. The dog pressed its body against him, offering warmth and presence as if to say, "I am here, do not be afraid." Time seemed to stretch. The man tried to speak, to call for help, but only a weak sound came out. The dog whined, circling around him, looking for a way to alert someone. It ran to the door and scratched, looking back to make sure the man was safe. The hours felt longer than ever, and the dog refused to leave his side even for a moment. The connection between them, built over many years, held firm in this moment of need. Neighbors eventually noticed something was amiss. The dog's barks, urgent and different from its usual calm greetings, alerted them. One neighbor rushed over, entering the house with concern. The man was lying quietly, his breathing slow, and the dog stayed close, growling softly when anyone came near without understanding the situation. The neighbor immediately understood and called for help, but the man had already begun the final journey that all must take alone. The dog refused to move. It sat by the man's side, resting its head on his chest as if trying to keep him with it, trying to hold back the inevitable. People watching from outside could see the intensity of its devotion, the pure loyalty that had lasted through all the years. The house, filled with the echoes of life and memories, now held a quiet sorrow. Yet in that sorrow there was also love, immense and unbroken. As the reality settled, the neighbors and friends quietly gave space to the dog, understanding that it needed to be near the man it had loved without condition. It refused to eat or leave the room, choosing instead to lie down near the man's favorite chair when it could not be next to him. Its eyes remained fixed on his still form, and it let out small whimpers, almost as if asking him to wake, to return, to share just one more moment together. The dog's grief was quiet, but profound. It remembered every shared moment, the walks through the streets, the quiet mornings by the fireplace, the gentle pats and whispered stories. Each memory seemed to echo in the dog's mind, reinforcing the bond that death could not sever. Every familiar smell, every small corner of the house held reminders of the man's presence, and the dog clung to them desperately, searching for comfort where none could fully be found. Friends of the man, who had come to help in the aftermath, noticed how the dog's loyalty had not faltered. They spoke softly among themselves, sharing stories of the man and his companion. One remembered how the dog had always been attentive, protective, and gentle, a constant presence in good times and bad. Another spoke of the walks they had seen over the years, the unspoken connection that had grown stronger with time. The dog listened as if understanding the words, but its heart and mind were focused only on the man it had loved for so long. Days passed, but the dog's routine remained the same. It sat by the man's side during the hours when he would have been active, waiting for him to rise, to call it, to share the small moments that had made life meaningful. Meals went untouched. The door remained a place to watch for the man's return. Visitors came and went, gently trying to coax the dog into eating or taking a short walk. But it always returned, quietly, to the spot where the man had rested. Its loyalty was unwavering, a testament to a bond that had been built over a lifetime. The town began to notice the dog's dedication. People spoke in hushed tones about the devotion they saw, and the dog became a symbol of love that outlasted presence. Children left small gifts, neighbors offered soft words, and the dog accepted these gestures politely but always returned to the man's side. It was a quiet, living reminder that love does not end with life, that loyalty is not measured in days but in heartbeats shared over time. The dog often wandered through the house, sniffing at corners and familiar places, tracing the steps they had walked together. It paused at the kitchen where the man had prepared meals, then at the garden where they had spent afternoons together. Each place held a memory, a fragment of the life they had shared. And though the man was gone, the dog carried the weight of those memories with a reverence that touched everyone who witnessed it. Nights were the hardest. The dog would sit by the empty chair, gazing at the fireplace where the man had spent so many evenings. It whined softly at times and occasionally lay down, resting its head on the floor, unable to find the comfort it had always known. Sleep was shallow, interrupted by dreams where the man's presence was near yet unreachable. Still, the dog remained steadfast, its heart refusing to let go, even as the world slowly moved on around it. Occasionally, the dog would go to the door, waiting for the man to return. It would watch the streets, ears perked, tail still, as if hoping to hear the familiar steps that would signal safety and companionship. Passers-by would stop, noticing the dog's unwavering gaze, the quiet sorrow that seemed almost human in its depth. Some would offer soft words of comfort, but the dog only returned to the man's side, unwilling to be distracted from its vigil. Neighbors began to respect the dog's space, understanding that it needed this time to grieve. They left food in familiar spots and checked from a distance, ensuring the dog was safe. The dog accepted these gestures, yet its attention never wavered. It had chosen its place, its purpose, and nothing could draw it away from the bond that had defined its life. As the weeks passed, the dog's loyalty became a quiet story of the town. People would stop by just to witness the devotion, touched by the way it refused to leave the man's side. Some shared stories with others, recounting how the dog had always been attentive, always protective, always loving. In those moments, the dog was more than a companion. It was a symbol, a living memory of a relationship that death could not erase. Even as seasons changed, the dog's behavior remained constant. It continued to follow the routines they had shared, waiting for moments that would never come, guarding spaces that once held the man's presence. And in this steadfast loyalty there was a quiet dignity, a testament to the love and connection that had been forged through years of shared life, unshaken by loss, unbroken by absence. Through it all, the dog never grew bitter or restless. Its grief was deep, but it carried it with quiet strength, honoring the man's memory with every glance, every step, every moment spent in familiar spaces. Those who witnessed it felt a sense of awe and respect, understanding that such loyalty and devotion were rare and precious. The dog had become a living reminder of what it meant to love without condition, to stand by someone through every moment, and to hold a bond that death could not sever. And so, the days went on. The man's chair remained empty, the meals went uneaten, and the streets were walked alone, yet the dog's heart remained full of love and loyalty. In the quiet of the house, by the spots that had once been filled with laughter and warmth, the dog waited, steadfast and true. Its story, though marked by loss, was also a story of enduring love, a bond that had grown too strong to be broken, even by death itself. Days turned into weeks, and the dog continued its quiet vigil in the house. The absence of the man was felt in every corner, in every routine they had shared. Yet, the dog never left the spaces that had been filled with his presence. It would sit by the chair where he used to read, lay near the fireplace where they had shared evenings together, and wander through the rooms, sniffing at the familiar scents that remained. Every corner held a memory, and the dog seemed determined to honor them all. Neighbors and friends began to notice the dog's unwavering loyalty. They would watch from a distance, seeing it follow the same paths the man had walked, sit at the same benches, and rest near the same spots in the garden. It was clear that the dog's life had become a living tribute, a way of keeping the memory of its beloved companion alive. People began leaving small offerings of food and water, gentle gestures of care, but the dog's heart remained firmly rooted in its devotion. The dog's daily routine did not change, even as seasons shifted. In the mornings, it would sit by the door, waiting for the man to wake and call it for their walks. When no one came, it would wander through the garden, circle the yard, and then return to the house, lying near the chair where he had once sat. Meals were largely ignored, yet the dog did not grow weak or restless. Its spirit remained strong, fueled by a devotion that had been nurtured over years. Sometimes, visitors tried to coax the dog into joining them outside or taking a small walk, but it would always return to the house, restless until it was near the man's belongings or familiar spaces. The neighbors began to respect its need to grieve in its own way. They understood that this was not ordinary behavior, but a reflection of a bond so deep that even the absence of life could not erase it. Stories of the dog's loyalty spread quietly through the town, inspiring awe and gentle admiration. The dog would often lie quietly in the sunlight streaming through the windows, eyes half closed yet alert to every sound. If the wind rustled the leaves, it would lift its head, ears pricked as though waiting for the man to appear. Sometimes it would walk to the man's favorite bench outside, sit quietly and glance around, expecting him to come through the gate as he had so often done. When no one appeared, it would rest its head on the bench, sighing softly yet never leaving. At night, the dog's loyalty shone even brighter. It would rest near the fireplace, close to where the man had always been. The house felt quiet and empty, but the dog seemed to fill it with a presence of its own. The neighbors, watching through windows, could see the devotion in every gesture, the careful way it laid its head down, the soft whines when memories seemed to rise, and the restless pacing when the house grew too silent. It was clear to all that the dog's heart remained fully tied to the man's memory. The town began to embrace the story of the dog. People would come to see it, bringing small gifts, kind words, and gentle attention. The dog accepted these gestures politely, but always returned to the home and its routines. It became a living reminder of loyalty, a symbol of love that transcended life itself. Children were told the story of the dog's dedication. Neighbors shared it over fences, and slowly, it became part of the fabric of the town's shared memory. In the quiet hours of the day, the dog would sit by the man's bed, sniffing at the sheets, pressing its nose to the pillows, and lying close to the spaces that had carried his presence. The bed, the chair, the garden, the familiar paths, they were all sacred in the dog's eyes. It was as though the dog had taken on a mission, to keep the memory alive, to protect the spaces, and to honor every moment they had spent together. No visitor could distract it. No gesture could replace the bond it held so fiercely. The dog's attentiveness extended to the smallest details. If the door creaked, it would listen, ears sharp. If the wind moved through the trees, it would pause, eyes scanning as though expecting the man to appear. Even as the world continued its routine, the dog remained a constant in the house, a living testament to a devotion that had no limits. Its days were filled with quiet acts of remembrance, and its nights were spent in vigilant care. Some evenings, the neighbors would see the dog lying in the doorway, watching the empty street as though expecting footsteps. Others would find it resting in the garden, waiting near the spots where the man had planted flowers or trimmed the bushes. Each action, each choice of place, reflected its unbroken bond and its unwillingness to let go. Even in its grief, there was a dignity, a quiet nobility that drew respect and admiration from everyone who witnessed it. The dog would occasionally visit the areas of the town they had walked together. Parks, benches, and corners where the man had once paused became sacred spots for the dog. It would sit quietly, head raised, tail still, listening to the sounds of life continuing around it. It was patient, calm, and unmovable in its purpose. The dog's presence reminded everyone that love and loyalty were not bound by time or presence, but by the depth of connection between hearts. Throughout the days and weeks, the dog maintained its vigilance, never faltering, never leaving the man's side, even when food, warmth, or comfort were offered elsewhere. Its eyes held the memory of countless walks, quiet evenings, and shared moments. Every sigh, every glance, and every gentle nuzzle expressed love that words could not capture. It was a silent language of devotion, understood by all who observed it, felt in the heart by those who witnessed it. As the seasons changed, the dog's dedication remained the same. Snow fell, leaves turned, and the world moved on, yet the dog stayed steadfast. It continued to honor the man's memory in every possible way. People visiting the town would hear the story of the dog, and many would stop by to see it, quietly learning the meaning of loyalty, devotion, and love. The dog's life had become a story in itself, a living reminder of a bond that could not be broken. Even as time passed, the dog's presence remained a source of comfort and inspiration. Children who had seen it in the streets learned about love and loyalty. Neighbors who observed its daily routines reflected on the depth of connection it shared with the man. And the dog, though aware of the absence, never faltered in its devotion. It carried on quietly, steadfastly, and faithfully, honoring the life that had been shared and the memories that would never fade. The house, once filled with laughter, conversation, and daily routines, now held a quiet reverence. The dog's presence kept the warmth alive. It reminded anyone who entered that love could endure beyond life, that loyalty was a living thing that could survive absence, and that bonds formed in life could never truly be broken. The dog moved through the rooms, lay in familiar spots, and watched the world from its windows, carrying the spirit of the man with it in every step. Through every sunrise and sunset, the dog continued its vigil. It remained by the man's favorite chair, wandered the garden paths they had walked together, and watched the town with attentive eyes. Meals were simple and sleep was often restless, yet the dog's heart was steadfast. Its life had taken on a new purpose: to honor, to remember, and to remain faithful, no matter the passing days. In its loyalty, it showed the deepest meaning of love and companionship. Even when approached with kindness, gentle hands, or soft words, the dog would accept only briefly before returning to the spaces and routines that had been shared with the man. Its devotion was absolute, unyielding, and deeply moving. It reminded the town day by day that true loyalty is not just a word but an action, a choice and a reflection of the heart. The dog's life became a silent story of love that outlasted presence, a bond that endured beyond loss, and a reminder that some connections are unbreakable. As time passed, the dog's routine remained unchanged. It still waited by the door each morning, wandered through the garden, and rested near the man's favorite chair. Though its body began to slow, its spirit and loyalty never wavered. The dog had grown older, the golden fur around its face turning silver, and its movements were slower, but the devotion in its eyes remained as strong as ever. Every gesture, every glance, every small action was a testament to the bond that had defined its life. The town continued to watch and care from a distance. Neighbors brought food, water, and blankets, understanding that the dog needed support even as it maintained its vigil. People stopped by to see the dog, quietly observing the unwavering devotion it displayed. Some shared the story with others, telling of the loyal companion who had never left the side of its beloved owner. Children learned about love and loyalty, adults reflected on the power of connection, and the dog became a symbol of something pure and enduring. Even as the seasons turned, the dog remained steadfast. Winters were cold, yet it would still sit near the door, waiting for the man who would never return. Springs brought flowers and sunlight, yet the dog would rest in the garden, revisiting familiar spots, remembering the moments shared with the man. Summers came with warmth and light, and the dog wandered the paths they had walked together, ears pricked, eyes scanning, as if hoping to catch a glimpse of him. Autumns brought falling leaves, and the dog would sit among them, silent and thoughtful, carrying the weight of memory and love in its heart. The house, once filled with laughter, had become a quiet sanctuary. The dog's presence kept it alive with memories. It would lie near the fireplace, close to the spots where the man had spent his evenings. It would walk through the rooms slowly, sniffing familiar corners, and pause at places where small joys had occurred. The chair by the window, the kitchen where meals were prepared, the garden where sunlight fell through the trees. Every space held fragments of the man, and the dog honored them all. Occasionally visitors would come, gentle and respectful, offering kind words or soft touches. The dog accepted these gestures briefly, then returned to the spaces it had claimed as sacred. Its heart and mind were focused entirely on the man's memory. Every wag of its tail, every sigh, every quiet movement was a silent expression of devotion. It lived in a world of memories, carrying the past forward, a living testament to a bond that death could not break. As the dog grew older, its movements slowed further. Its steps became cautious and its naps grew longer. Yet, it never left the home, never strayed far from the places that had been filled with the man's presence. It continued to visit the garden, rest by the door, and lie near the chair by the fireplace. The town watched with a mixture of sadness and admiration, seeing how one life could carry so much love and loyalty, even in the absence of the one it cherished. The dog would sometimes lie quietly near the man's belongings, pressing its nose against clothing or brushing against familiar objects. It seemed to remember the smell, the touch, and the presence of the man. People who came to see it were often moved to tears, understanding that this devotion was beyond what words could express. The dog's life had become a living story, a message about love, loyalty, and the power of connection. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, the dog lay by the fireplace, resting its head on its paws. Its breathing was slower yet calm, and its eyes held a softness that spoke of peace and contentment. The world outside continued, yet the dog remained in its sanctuary, surrounded by the memories of a life filled with love and companionship. It had fulfilled its purpose in the purest way possible, honoring every moment shared with the man. As night fell, the dog moved to the man's favorite chair one last time. It lay down, closing its eyes, and seemed to breathe with the rhythm of memories. The house was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the windows. The dog's heart carried the love and loyalty that had defined its entire life, and in that quiet moment it rested fully, surrounded by the essence of the one it had never stopped loving. In the following days, the neighbors noticed the stillness in the house. The dog had passed peacefully in the place it had chosen, surrounded by the memories of the man it loved. The town mourned quietly, but they also celebrated the life of a companion whose devotion had touched everyone who knew the story. Flowers were left at the house, gentle words were spoken, and the story of the dog's loyalty spread further, inspiring others to reflect on the bonds they shared with loved ones. The home, though quiet, remained a symbol of a life and a bond that could never be broken. The chair, the fireplace, the garden, the familiar paths, all stood as reminders of a connection that had endured through years, through challenges, and through the passage of time. The dog's presence had kept the spirit alive, and now, even in its absence, the memory of its devotion continued to touch hearts. People in the town would occasionally pause by the house, remembering the dog and the man. They would tell the story to others about a companion who had never left, who had carried love in its heart until the very end. Children would hear about the dog's loyalty, and adults would reflect on the power of unwavering devotion. The story became part of the town's shared memory, a quiet legend about the endurance of love. The dog's life had shown that loyalty is not just about presence, but about heart. It had carried the memory of the man, honored every space and routine, and lived a life full of love and devotion. Even in death, the dog's story continued to inspire. A reminder that the bonds we form with those we love are not confined by time or life itself. The home remained, a quiet sanctuary, filled with the echoes of love and loyalty. The man's memory and the dog's devotion were inseparable, intertwined in ways that could never be broken. Every corner of the house held fragments of a life shared, and those who knew the story understood that the essence of true companionship endures, even after loss. And so the story of the dog and the man lived on, a testament to the power of love, loyalty, and connection. The dog had fulfilled its purpose in the purest way, and its memory continued to touch hearts, reminding everyone that some bonds are unbreakable, and some love never fades. In the quiet house, in the hearts of the town, and in the story shared by those who had witnessed it, the bond between the man and his dog endured forever.